This building in the heart of London's tech district was home to TechBridge Solutions, one of Europe's fastest-growing software companies. The company had built its reputation on speed, launching products faster than anyone in the industry. Their CEO, James Mitchell, demanded perfection, and he got it from a team of elite programmers handpicked from Oxford, Cambridge, and MIT. But in September of 2023, something happened that would challenge everything James believed about excellence. This wasn't about credentials. It was about someone he'd already dismissed. Meet Carlo Reyes, 28 years old, from Quezon City, Manila. Carlo had graduated from the University of the Philippines with a degree in computer science 4 years earlier. While his classmates landed jobs at Google and Microsoft offices in Singapore, Carlo stayed in Manila, working remotely for a small startup that paid a fraction of what his peers earned abroad. His family didn't understand why he turned down those offers. His father, a retired teacher, kept asking when Carlo would get a real job at a big company. But Carlo had a reason. His younger sister was in college, and his mother's medical bills from her diabetes treatment were mounting. Working from home meant he could be there, support his family, and still pursue what he loved: writing code. In July 2023, Carlo applied to TechBridge Solutions. They were expanding their development team, and the remote position meant he could work from Manila while earning a London salary. The job posting said they valued innovative thinking and problem-solving excellence. Carlo submitted his application, a detailed portfolio showcasing his work, including an app he'd built in his spare time that had 50,000 users in the Philippines. He'd written every line of code himself, optimized it to run on low-end phones, and made it work even with poor internet connections. 3 weeks later, he got the interview. The technical assessment was brutal. Algorithms, system design, coding challenges under time pressure. Carlo stayed up until 3 a.m. Manila time to take the test during London business hours. His sister brought him coffee while he coded, watching her older brother's fingers fly across the keyboard. Carlo passed. Not just passed, he scored in the top 15%. TechBridge offered him the position, junior developer on a probationary contract. 6 months to prove himself. The salary was good, enough to cover his mother's medication and his sister's tuition with some left over. Carlo accepted immediately. What TechBridge didn't know was that they'd just hired someone who would redefine what they thought was possible. But first, he'd have to survive working for James Mitchell. This is James Mitchell, 42 years old, CEO and founder of TechBridge Solutions. James had built his company from his London apartment 12 years earlier, and by 2023, TechBridge was worth over £200 million. They'd developed software platforms for major banks, healthcare systems, and government agencies across Europe. James was known in the industry as a perfectionist. He'd famously fired senior developers for missing deadlines by a single day. His philosophy was simple: the best rise to the top, and everyone else is dead weight. He drove a Porsche, lived in a Kensington penthouse, and his team worked 80-hour weeks to match his pace. James believed talent was obvious. You could see it in someone's resume, their university, their previous employers. Cambridge graduate, hired. MIT background, hired. Startup experience in Silicon Valley, hired. When his HR director suggested expanding their talent search to include remote developers from Southeast Asia, James was skeptical. "They're slower," he'd said in a meeting. "Different work ethic. We need people who think like us." But his director persisted. They were struggling to fill positions. London's tech talent was expensive and scarce. Eventually, James agreed to a trial. Hire a few remote developers on probation, see if any of them could keep up. Carlo was one of 5 hired that month. James never looked at their individual applications. He told his CTO, "Just get them started on basic tasks. If they can't handle it, we cut them loose in 3 months instead of 6. To James, Carlo was just another name on a spreadsheet, a budget-friendly gamble who probably wouldn't last. In October, 2 months into Carlo's employment, that gamble was about to prove James Mitchell catastrophically wrong. The crisis started on a Friday afternoon in London, 11 p.m. in Manila. TechBridge's largest client, a multinational bank, reported a critical bug in their transaction system. Money transfers were failing randomly. Every minute the system was down cost the bank hundreds of thousands of pounds. James called an emergency meeting. His entire senior development team, 8 programmers, all from elite universities, scrambled to identify the problem. They'd been working on this codebase for 2 years. They knew it inside and out. 4 hours passed, then 8, then 12. They couldn't find it. The bug was buried somewhere in 2 million lines of code, and every fix they attempted created 3 new problems. By midnight London time, James was pacing his office, furious. The bank was threatening to terminate their contract, a £5 million deal that represented 20% of TechBridge's revenue. At 7 a.m. Manila time, Carlo logged into Slack. He saw the emergency channel, messages flying back and forth, senior developers arguing about possible solutions. Carlo had only been with the company 2 months. He'd been assigned to minor tasks, fixing typos in documentation, updating old features nobody cared about. But Carlo read through the messages carefully. Then he opened the codebase and started reading code. James, exhausted and desperate, saw a message pop up from Carlo. "I think I might have found something." James barely remembered who Carlo was. He clicked on the profile. "Carlo Reyes, Junior Developer, Manila." "This is a senior-level crisis," James typed back. "Focus on your assigned tasks." But Carlo sent another message. "It's in the payment validation module. Line 47,328. There's a race condition when 2 transactions hit the same timestamp." James stared at his screen. His senior team had checked that module 3 times. They'd found nothing. "That module has been reviewed," James replied curtly. "It's not there." Carlo's next message included a screenshot. 20 lines of code with annotations explaining exactly how the bug occurred, under what conditions, and why it had been so hard to replicate. James called his CTO. "Check line 47,328 of the payment module." 5 minutes later, the CTO called back, his voice stunned. "He's right. It's there. How did he find this?" Over the next 6 hours, Carlo walked the senior team through the fix. The bug was subtle, a race condition that only occurred when 2 transactions from different time zones hit the server within the same microsecond. It happened maybe once in every 50,000 transactions, which is why it was nearly impossible to catch in testing. But Carlo had found it by reading the code like a novel, tracing every possible path a transaction could take through the system. While the senior developers had used automated testing tools and debugging software, Carlo had simply read 20,000 lines in 4 hours. The fix required changing 11 lines of code. Carlo wrote it, tested it on his local machine in Manila, and sent the patch to the CTO. Within an hour, the system was back online. The bank's transfers resumed. The crisis was over. James sat in his London office at 2 a.m., staring at Slack. This junior developer in Manila, the one he'd barely approved hiring, the one he'd told his team wouldn't last 3 months, had just solved a problem that 8 of Europe's best programmers couldn't crack in 12 hours. But it wasn't just that Carlo found the bug. It was how he found it. Carlo's message history showed he'd started by reading through 6 months of client bug reports, looking for patterns. He'd analyzed server logs that the senior team had dismissed as irrelevant. He'd even drawn flowcharts by hand, photographed them, and sent them to the team explaining his thought process. "I learned to code on a laptop that crashed every 20 minutes, Carlo had written in one message. "You learn to read carefully when you can't afford to recompile constantly." James's CTO sent him a private message. "This kid is special. That code review he did was postgraduate level work. Where did you find him?" James didn't respond immediately. He pulled up Carlo's file. University of the Philippines, not Oxford. No Silicon Valley experience, no tech accelerator background, just a portfolio of work that James had never bothered to look at because he'd assumed the degree meant Carlo couldn't compete with Cambridge graduates. James had built his empire on recognizing talent. But he'd missed Carlo entirely because he was looking for the wrong credentials. For the first time in years, James Mitchell realized he'd been wrong about something fundamental. Talent doesn't look the same everywhere. Sometimes it's sitting in a small apartment in Manila, staying up all night because someone trusted them with a chance. 2 days later, James requested a video call with Carlo. It was 7 a.m. in Manila when Carlo's laptop chimed with the meeting notification. He'd been up for an hour already, preparing for another day of minor tasks and bug fixes. James appeared on screen, sitting in his London office. "Carlo," James said, "I need to apologize." Carlo blinked, confused. "I didn't give you a fair chance," James continued. "I looked at where you went to school, not what you could do. That was a mistake, a big one." James leaned forward. "That bug you caught, my senior developers have been with me for 5 years. They're excellent, but you saw something they couldn't. I need to know. How?" Carlo hesitated, then spoke. "In Manila, we learned to solve problems without perfect tools. I coded on old computers, unreliable internet. You learn to think through problems in your head first because you might lose your work if the power goes out. It teaches you to read code carefully, to see patterns." James nodded slowly. "I'm promoting you to senior developer, effective immediately, and I'm tripling your salary." Carlo thought he'd misheard. "Sir, you saved this company millions of pounds," James said. "And more importantly, you showed me I've been hiring wrong. I've been looking for credentials instead of ability. I want you to help me change that." Within a month, James restructured TechBridge's entire hiring process. He brought Carlo to London, company-paid flight, accommodations arranged, to train the team on code review techniques. Carlo spent 3 weeks teaching Oxford and Cambridge graduates the practices he'd learned out of necessity in Manila. The senior developers, initially skeptical, were stunned by what Carlo showed them. 6 months after fixing that critical bug, Carlo stood in TechBridge's London headquarters during their annual company meeting. James had flown him in business class. Carlo's first time ever in business class, his first time in Europe. James introduced him to an audience of 200 employees and investors. "This is Carlo Reyes," James said. "He's from Manila. He went to a university none of you have heard of. And he's one of the best developers I've ever worked with. More importantly, he taught me something I should have learned years ago. Excellence doesn't come with a pedigree. It comes from people who care enough to be exceptional." The room applauded. Carlo stood there, uncomfortable with the attention, just wanting to get back to writing code. But for Carlo, this moment wasn't about the applause or the recognition. It was about the video call he'd made to his family the night before. His mother's diabetes medication was fully covered now. His sister had graduated from college. Carlo had been able to pay her entire final year's tuition. His father no longer asked about real jobs. More than that, TechBridge had hired 3 more Filipino developers on Carlo's recommendation. They were no longer the exception. They were proof that talent exists everywhere if you're willing to look beyond universities and resumes. James and Carlo developed a genuine friendship. Every month, they had a call where James asked Carlo to review code, not because Carlo was faster, but because Carlo saw things differently. Carlo's approach, patient, thorough, learned from limitation, balanced James's aggressive, move-fast culture. TechBridge's next major product release included a feature designed entirely by Carlo, a system that worked flawlessly even on slow connections, designed for users in developing countries who couldn't afford high-speed internet. It was the most praised feature in the company's history. Today, Carlo still works remotely from Manila most of the time. He visits London quarterly for team meetings, but he prefers his small apartment where he can see his family and work from the coffee shop where he used to study as a student. There was no grand transformation, no magazine cover, no TED Talk, not even a LinkedIn post celebrating his promotion. Just Carlo, every morning, sitting at the same desk, writing code that serves millions of users worldwide. including people in the Philippines who benefit from technology designed with their limitations in mind. James built a program at TechBridge called Global Excellence Initiative. They now recruit from universities in Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Africa. 20% of their development team works remotely from countries James had never considered hiring from. The company's quality improved. Their products became more resilient, more thoughtful, better designed for real-world conditions, all because one CEO was forced to admit he'd been looking for talent in the wrong places. This story isn't about proving people wrong or overcoming discrimination. It's about something simpler and more important. Filipino excellence doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't demand recognition. It just shows up, does the work that others overlook, and quietly changes outcomes. Sometimes the world notices, sometimes it doesn't. But it's always there. In small apartments across Manila, in overnight shifts, fixing critical bugs, in code that works even when everything else fails. And that's the real story of Carlo Reyes from Quezon City, the programmer who saw what Cambridge graduates couldn't, and reminded a British CEO what excellence actually looks like.